Let me break this down real slow, because this right here is where most people lose their power without even realizing it. Silence is a test, not punishment, not confusion, a test. And the way you respond to silence tells a man everything he needs to know about you without you ever opening your mouth. When a man pulls back, goes quiet, delays his replies, or suddenly changes his energy, he is observing. He's watching to see what that silence does to you. Does it shake you? Does it make you anxious? Does it make you abandon your peace, your routine, your dignity just to restore his attention? Because attention is currency, and the one who needs it more has already lost leverage. Most people misunderstand silence. They think silence means rejection, disinterest, or danger. So fear kicks in, and fear makes people act out of character. They start sending long messages trying to explain feelings that were never asked about. They start asking questions they already know the answer to. They start chasing reassurance instead of standing in confidence. And the moment that happens, the test answers itself. If you were already solid within yourself, silence wouldn't rush you. It wouldn't control your emotions. It wouldn't dictate your behavior. You would notice it, register it, and continue living your life without scrambling to fix something that hasn't been broken yet. See, a man doesn't test you with words because words can be manipulated. Words can be rehearsed. But reactions are honest. Reactions show habits. Reactions show emotional discipline or the lack of it. When he steps back and you remain centered, he learns something important. This person isn't dependent on me for emotional stability. When silence causes panic, when it triggers overthinking, when it turns into overcommunication, it signals emotional dependency, not love, dependency. And no matter how strong the connection is, dependency slowly erodes respect. You have to understand something critical here. Calm is a response. Doing nothing is still doing something. Choosing not to react impulsively is strength. When you don't rush to fill silence, you let it speak. You let behavior reveal intention, and you protect your self-respect in the process. A man expects emotional reactions. He's prepared for them. What he's not prepared for is emotional maturity. He's not prepared for someone who doesn't flinch when the energy changes. Someone who doesn't interrogate silence. Someone who doesn't beg for clarity but calmly observes patterns. Because now the question shifts. Instead of how far can I pull back, it becomes why didn't that move her? And that's when respect deepens. Not because you played a game, but because you didn't abandon yourself. Silence also tests patience. Can you wait without worrying? Can you allow space without assuming the worst? Can you stay grounded without needing immediate reassurance? These qualities signal inner security, and inner security is rare. That's why it stands out. People who rush to react are trying to control the outcome. People who stay calm trust themselves enough to let the truth surface naturally. Silence has a way of revealing intentions faster than conversations ever could. And here's the part most people miss. Passing the test doesn't guarantee the person stays, and that's okay, because the test was never about keeping them. It was about keeping yourself intact. If someone pulls away and never returns, silence still served its purpose. It showed you who they were without you having to beg for honesty. Silence teaches emotional discipline. It teaches you to sit with uncertainty without letting it rewrite your value. And the moment you master that, your presence changes. You move differently. You speak differently. You no longer need to convince anyone of your worth because your behavior already does the talking. Let me tell you something most people don't want to accept. Consistency is louder than emotion. Anybody can show up strong for a week, say the right things, make big promises, and create excitement. But when time passes, when effort is no longer fueled by adrenaline, that's when the real test begins. Men watch consistency more than they listen to words, because consistency tells them what's real and what's temporary. When a man tests you, he's not always looking for reaction. Sometimes he's looking for rhythm. He wants to see if you stay the same when things get comfortable, when things slow down, when the intensity fades. Do you still show up as yourself, or do you start adjusting your behavior to keep his attention? Because the moment you start changing who you are to maintain interest, the dynamic shifts. Chasing energy is exhausting, And more importantly, it sends the message that your emotional state depends on his level of engagement. Men may enjoy attention, but they respect stability. They respect someone who doesn't rise and fall based on how much attention they're getting in the moment. Consistency doesn't mean being available at all times. It doesn't mean tolerating confusion. It means being grounded in your values regardless of what someone else is doing. It means your tone, your standards, and your self-respect don't fluctuate just because communication slows down or affection changes temporarily. Here's where many people get it wrong. When effort from a man drops, they think the solution is to increase their own effort. More messages, more affection, more explanation, more patience. But relationships don't work on compensation. You can't make up for someone else's inconsistency by overextending yourself. All that does is drain you and teach the other person that they can do less while you do more. Men test this quietly. They pull back just enough to see if you'll lean forward too far. And if you do, the balance is gone. Not because leaning forward is wrong, but because losing balance creates a dynamic where one person leads emotionally and the other follows. Over time, that imbalance creates resentment. Consistency is knowing when to pause instead of pushing. When communication slows, you don't rush to fix it. You continue living your life. You respond, but you don't chase. You show interest, but you don't overinvest. You stay warm without becoming desperate. That middle ground is powerful. Men respect patterns. They trust what repeats. When your behavior stays steady, predictable, in a healthy way, it signals emotional maturity. It tells him you're not reactive, you're responsive. You're not performing, you're present. And presence is magnetic. Another truth, consistency reveals whether interest is mutual. When you stop chasing, when you stop filling gaps, you allow space for effort to come forward naturally. If it does, you know it's genuine. If it doesn't, you've saved yourself time and energy. Either way, consistency protects you. People often confuse consistency with loyalty at any cost. That's not it. Consistency includes knowing when to step back. It includes knowing when something no longer aligns with your standards. Staying consistent with yourself sometimes means allowing distance to grow instead of forcing closeness. Men notice when you don't beg for attention. They notice when you don't overreact to temporary shifts. They notice when you don't punish silence with drama or reward inconsistency with endless understanding. That steadiness communicates value without saying a word. There's also confidence in not rushing outcomes. When you're consistent, you don't need immediate validation. You're comfortable letting things unfold. That comfort signals inner security, and inner security creates trust. Trust grows attraction in ways excitement alone never can. And here's the key. Consistency isn't about controlling the other person. It's about controlling yourself, your emotions, your responses, your boundaries. When you master that, you stop trying to earn effort. You simply observe it. Men test consistency because they want to know what kind of energy they're committing to. Chaos or calm, pressure or peace. When you remain consistent, you quietly communicate that you bring stability, not stress. Let's talk about standards, because standards are the invisible line that separates how people treat you. You don't need to announce them. You don't need to argue for them. You don't need to remind anyone of them every day. Standards show up in what you allow, what you excuse, and what you quietly walk away from. And men test this constantly, often without even realizing they're doing it. A man will push limits to understand the boundaries of the connection, not always in a malicious way, but out of curiosity and self-interest. He might show up late. He might communicate inconsistently. He might give just enough effort to keep things going while holding back full commitment. And in those moments, he's watching closely, not your words, but your response. Most people think asserting standards means confrontation. It doesn't. Confrontation can actually weaken your position when overused. Standards are strongest when they are calm, steady, and enforced through action. When you keep explaining why something bothers you but continue to accept it, the explanation loses value. What stays is the behavior you tolerate. Men learn very quickly what is acceptable. If inconsistency is met with endless patience, it becomes normal. If disrespect is met with justification, it becomes permission. Not because the man is evil, but because human beings adjust to the boundaries they're given. The mistake many people make is negotiating their standards in the name of connection. They lower expectations, hoping effort will increase later. They accept confusion because they're afraid clarity will push the person away. But clarity doesn't push away the right people. It only exposes the wrong ones. Having standards doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. It tells a man, without aggression or apology, that access to you requires a certain level of effort, consistency, and respect. And when that message is sent through behavior instead of lectures, it lands deeper. Men test standards by observing what happens when they don't meet them. Do you speak up once and then let it go while the behavior continues? Do you become quieter and more accommodating instead of firmer? Or do you simply adjust your availability and energy to match what's being offered? That last response is powerful. Matching energy isn't punishment, it's alignment. If effort decreases, you don't demand more. You meet the level being given and observe. If communication becomes unclear, you don't chase clarity. You step back and let action speak. This is where self-respect lies. Not in ultimatums, not in emotional speeches, but in quiet decisions, deciding not to overextend, deciding not to explain yourself repeatedly, deciding not to stay where your needs are consistently minimized. Men feel that shift immediately, even if they don't mention it, because access to you changes. Your energy changes, and energy is more persuasive than words. Another truth, standards protect your emotional health. When you abandon them, you carry resentment. You become frustrated, anxious, and emotionally exhausted. And then emotional weight eventually leaks into the connection anyway. Standards prevent that by keeping the dynamic balanced. Some people worry that standards will scare men away. But the men who are scared by standards are the ones who benefit from you having none. The ones who stay are the ones who are already capable of meeting them. Men respect what they have to rise to. If everything is available with minimal effort, there's no incentive to grow. Standards create direction. They show what's required to move forward. And here's the key part. Standards must be consistent. You can't enforce them one day and abandon them the next because you're lonely or afraid of losing someone. Inconsistency in standards teaches people to wait you out. Consistency teaches them to step up or step away. When you hold your standards calmly without bitterness or hostility, you communicate confidence, you show that you know what you deserve and you're willing to protect it. That confidence changes how people approach you. They become more intentional, more respectful, more careful with your time and emotions. Standards aren't about control, they're about alignment. They ensure that the connection matches your values instead of constantly challenging them. And when a man realizes that access to you requires integrity, he either rises or removes himself. Self-respect is the clearest language you will ever speak, and the powerful part is that you don't have to say a single word for it to be understood. Men understand self-respect instinctively. They may not label it that way, but they feel it in how you move, how you respond, and what you refuse to tolerate. When self-respect is present, behavior adjusts around it. When it's absent, tests increase. Self-respect starts internally. It's a decision that your value does not rise or fall based on someone else's attention, effort, or approval. When that decision is made, your behavior changes naturally. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing clarity. You stop trying to convince someone to choose you. And those shifts are impossible to miss. Men test self-respect by observing how much you bend when pressure is applied. Pressure can look like inconsistency, mixed signals, emotional distance, or temporary withdrawal. None of those are accidental. They are moments designed, consciously or unconsciously, to see how anchored you are in yourself. When self-respect is weak, pressure creates anxiety. Anxiety creates overreaction. Overreaction creates loss of dignity. You text too much. You tolerate too little effort. You accept confusion in exchange for proximity. And every time you do that, you communicate that your need to stay connected is stronger than your need to stay aligned with yourself. But when self-respect is strong, pressure reveals calm. You don't rush to respond. You don't plead for reassurance. You don't fill silence with emotional labor. You observe. You assess. You decide. That calm is not indifference. It's confidence. Men feel that immediately because self-respect removes control from the dynamic. When someone can't destabilize you with distance or silence, they realize they're dealing with someone who knows their worth. That changes the entire interaction. Self-respect also shows up in what you do after disappointment. Anyone can act composed when things are going well. The real test is what happens when expectations aren't met. Do you rationalize disrespect? Do you make excuses for patterns that hurt you? Or do you acknowledge the behavior for what it is and adjust accordingly? Adjusting doesn't always mean leaving immediately. It can mean pulling back emotionally. It can mean lowering access. It can mean choosing not to invest where effort is lacking. Those quiet choices speak volumes. Men listen to actions. They watch what changes after mistakes. If nothing changes, they assume the behavior is acceptable. If access changes, they understand a boundary has been crossed. No argument required. Self-respect is also about patience with yourself, not abandoning your standards because you feel lonely, not settling because you're tired of waiting, not shrinking your expectations to fit someone else's limitations. When you hold yourself to that level of integrity, others either rise to meet it or reveal they can't. And here's the part most people overlook. Self-respect isn't aggressive. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need ultimatums or emotional displays. It's quiet, steady, and unmovable. That quiet strength is intimidating to people who rely on emotional leverage, but it's deeply attractive to those who value stability and maturity. Men understand self-respect and value. When you treat yourself as valuable, others follow your lead. When you protect your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being, you teach people how to approach you. This doesn't guarantee perfect treatment from everyone, but it guarantees peace within yourself. And peace is something people feel when they're around you. That peace becomes associated with your presence. And once that happens, respect naturally follows. Self-respect means you no longer need to prove anything. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to be chosen at all costs. You choose yourself first, calmly and consistently. And that choice becomes the strongest message you'll ever send.